So guys, what's up? What if Naruto betrayed Fem Kyubi and Kurama movie? Naruto couldn't believe it. The love of his life confessed that she loved him. It's too good to be true. He's thinking with his heart, not his head. Yes, Naruto. I realized that I love you. The intensity in her voice, her passion, further helped Naruto clear the doubt in his head. Naruto's head cracked, and his mind exploded. Shock was written all over his face. His hands were cold. His throat was dry. His mind was trying to process what she just said, but he kept repeating it in his mind over and over. She loves me. Naruto's eyes widened, and sky blue eyes shimmered, tears threatening to come out. He grasped Sakura by the hands, and pulled her in closer to his body. Sakura. Do why you really love me? Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat as he said love. Sakura signed, and smiled softly. Why yes Naruto. I love you, she replied. She reached to touch his face, but he grasped her hand again. He put her hands to his face, and cried. Sakura watched as her teammate, friend, and lover cry his heart out to her. His second goal in life fulfilled. It broke her heart knowing that she didn't really love him. More like a brother, yes, but lover, no. Her heart was torn in two. Sakura. I don't know what to say. Sakura touched his face, and dried the tears that were still on his face. He grabbed his cheeks, and drew him closer to her. How about this? She kissed him right in the mouth. Warm, sweet, soft, those were the beginning feelings that they felt. Naruto's mind exploded into a shower of confusion, but that was all washed away when he felt her lips. He closed his eyes to enjoy the moment, and pulled her closer. She allowed it, and pulled his head closer. Their kiss felt like it lasted for hours, but in the outside it was only a 30 seconds. They pulled away from each other. Saliva followed their lips as they separated. Naruto looked at her with undying love, but Sakura looked hesitant. Before her look changed into doubt. Naruto thought with his heart, not his head. The crowd of Lee, Kiba, Sai, Kakashi, Yamato watched in shock as they actually kissed. Lee most of all was devastated. Sakura. He didn't want to cry, but he did, so he did the next best thing to hide it. Oh. What youth. Lee put his right arm over his eyes, and cried. Of love lost. Kiba smelled the lie, as well as Kakashi. It was obvious to them that Sakura deceived Naruto. She played with his love for her, and used it for her advantage. Kiba gritted his teeth, anger washing over him like spilled beans on your plate. I am going to have a talk with her. Kakashi just shook his head in disappointment. Sakura. You fool. Kakashi thought with a grimaced face. If you act like that no one will like you. Kakashi looked at Yamato, and nodded, and I thought you matured. Yamato suddenly spoke up after a long, awkward silence. Naruto. He called out. Let's go. Naruto looked at Yamato, then back at Sakura. He reluctantly released her, and approached his squad leader. He nodded at Yamato, but before he jumped away, he gave one last glance at Sakura before leaving. Right when Naruto was out of range, Kiba approached Sakura, well more like stomped over to her. He gave her a nasty glare, and said, how can you play like him Sakura? You're his teammate. How can? Before he finished his sentence Sakura slapped him. Hard. She glared at him with fury in her lime green eyes. Don't you ever tell me what I can, or can't do Kiba. What I do is my own business. Not yours. She was prepared to strike him again when Kakashi's voice stopped her. Sakura stop. It was more of a demand than an actual order. Sakura turned to glare at her sensei, but instead she felt like shrinking under his glare. Stop your foolishness. You're a shinobi, so act like one. If you are doing this to fill your own void of loneliness, then don't bother to drag Naruto into this. Sakura took a step back as she clenched her fist. Lee was the one that voiced his thoughts next. Stop. All of you, Kakashi, and Kiba were the only ones surprised at how quiet he said it. He sounded hurt, but other than that he masked his other emotions perfectly. Don't fight now that we are so close to war. Kakashi, and Kiba begrudgingly nodded at that. Kiba grunted as a response before walking up to his partner, Akamaru. Let's go buddy. The dog gave a single bark as a response, and followed his master partner. They both jumped away, back to the Leaf Village. Kakashi watched as the two dogs jumped away. He turned to look back at Sakura, and said, let's go Sakura. Sakura turned to look back at her sensei, but Sasuke-kun, she stuttered. Now it all made sense no. She came here for Sasuke, not Naruto. He sighed to himself. How could I have let it go so far? Without even knowing it, Sakura, he said with authority, but with a little softness in his voice, Sasuke is a lost cause. Don't let your false love for him bring you down. He was met with a blank stare. Sensei. Her voice was so quiet that Kakashi was barely able to hear. It's not false love. I do love him, so that's why I must save him from himself. Kakashi instantly knew what she was going with. He shook his head slowly. No, Sakura. What you're doing is selfish, to both yourself, as well as Naruto. How do you think he feels? It's not about you as much as you think. Kakashi turned his back on her. He tilted his head to look at her from his side, and said, and even if you do meet him, what makes you think you will be able to beat him? Now, come on, let's go back. As much as she hated it, Sakura nodded. She clenched her fist so hard that a few bones cracked under pressure. She forced herself a smile. Okay, sensei. She gave him a sweet smile, but Kakashi knew otherwise. Kakashi nodded, slowly, and jumped away with Sakura right behind him. Lee watched the exchange with a mixture of emotions deep within. He slowly nodded to himself, newfound determination wailing up inside of him, and he jumped towards the trees to catch up with them. 3 months later, Valley of the End. Sasuke. You don't know how long I waited for this day to come. The smirk in the raven-haired teen further fueled the annoyance in the blonde's voice. Dobi. You know as well as I do that you won't be able to beat me. Sasuke's smirk grew bigger. If not possible, Naruto merely laughed, which irritated the raven-haired shinobi. What's so funny? You think this is a game? Sasuke's eyes flashed from red to onyx black with every second Naruto's laughter continued. Naruto wiped the tear from his eyes, and looked right at the raven-haired shinobi, not afraid to look into his Sharingan eyes. They say that arrogance is poetic. I just realized how right that is. Your arrogance, Sasuke, is outstanding. Naruto smirked as Sasuke's eyes flashed with anger at his remark. As angry as he got, Sasuke stopped. It's okay, Sasuke. Deep breaths. Sasuke smirked returned, and the annoyance on Naruto's returned. All talk, Naruto. But after this, no more. With that, the raven-haired shinobi rushed at the blonde with impressive speed. He disappeared from sight, and reappeared right behind the blonde, the smirk in his face still plastered on his face. Naruto was the one who smirked last as he, too, disappeared. Sasuke looked around the area in shock. He was actually surprised at how fast he had gotten in so little time. He actually smiled. Not his usual smirk, but a smile. Sasuke was smiling. Finally a challenge. He caught Naruto's movement from the corner of his eyes, and punched his arm forward, knocking the wind right out of him. And with him of all people, my brother. Sasuke ducked under a kick that Naruto threw, and gave out his own kick. Naruto tried to dodge while in midair, but he couldn't. Sasuke's foot connected to Naruto's stomach. The blonde-haired shinobi's eyes rolled into the back of his head, and gasped. A few cracks were heard as he went flying to Uchiha Madara's statue. Sasuke looked at the crater, where Naruto's body went. With a smirk, he shushined out the Senju statue, and reappeared in front of the blonde. As he was about to punch him, the blonde-haired shinobi's body burst into smoke, shadow clones. Sasuke turned his head just in time to see the blonde with a Rasengan in his hand. You can play it that way. Sasuke formed the 3 hand signs needed for his move, and he grabbed his wrist. His hand shook as electricity started to gather. A ball of lightning appeared, and just as it did, Sasuke put the ball of lightning in front of him. Ra, Sen, gone. The blonde-haired shinobi yelled out. Chidori. As the blonde won, the raven-haired shinobi shouted out his attack with equal ferociousness. As both attacks almost connected, Sasuke reached out to grab his sword. He was about to slice at him when the Naruto in front of him turned into smoke, another shadow clone. Grr. A Sasuke's attack continued forward. He looked up, and a single Rasengan was seen coming down on him. His eyes widened as the attack connected to his face. Rasengan. The blonde-haired shinobi shouted in triumph. The force of the attack sent Sasuke flying into the cold water below. The Uchiha pushed chakra into his body as he landed in the river. He got up, and glared at the smug blonde one. All wet. Eh? Naruto taunted. Fuck you. He responded. Naruto laughed to himself. You know, Naruto began, now that I think about it, your hairstyle resembles a duck's ass. The way the blonde shinobi said it further pissed the raven one off, but Naruto wasn't done yet. If you put your whole body into the river, only allowing your hair to stick out. I bet you will probably lose fangirls that way. Just make sure you place a mouth in front of your hair, and it'll really look like a duck. Sasuke's face color changed from white to red in a matter of seconds. Anger, frustration, embarrassment. The list goes on and on. Sasuke forced himself to calm down, before smirking, again. At least I had fangirls. Naruto's eyes widened at his implication. All you had was ramen. Naruto's eyes turned red, and his nails lengthened. You bastard. Naruto jumped down into the ravine below, with the intention to kill him. Make fun of me. Okay. But, make fun of ramen. You're dead. Sasuke's short verbal victory was cut short as Naruto punched him in the face. He followed up with a back kick, followed by reverse kick. Sasuke went crashing down into the bottom of the cold water below. The anger inside the raven-haired shinobi reached its all-time high. He channeled a huge amount of chakra into his eyes, and it morphed into his Mangekyo Sharingan. On his left eye he had his brother's pinwheel eye, while in the other he had the Jewish star. His aura turned colder than before, as he blasted a concentrated amount of flames, black flames to be exact, onto the surface. Naruto stood onto the water, anger flowing through him like a calm river. His ears twitched a bit, and he felt something hot in his feet. He heard a sizzling noise, and add that with the heat he felt, something's burning. He looked down into the bottom of the river just in time to see a huge concentrated blast of black flames racing towards him. Amaterasu. Naruto channeled his red chakra into his legs, and with a burst of speed he disappeared, and reappeared on top of the statue. Just as the black flame came flying out the river towards the sky, the black flames stopped, and exploded. The black flames turned into tiny black flames, and they hit the ground all around the area. Naruto looked down on the ravine just in time to see his rival stand back up. You brought this upon yourself, Naruto. If you only let me go, I wouldn't have hated you as much. Sasuke flew through hand signs before exclaiming, fire style, mythical fire phoenix technique. Naruto just stood there as the attacks came onto him. He held his arm out, and channeled his blue chakra into his hands. Rasengan. He exclaimed. The fire attack hit the Rasengan, making the flames go around Naruto, in a counterclockwise form. Naruto smirked at his accomplishment, but that was short-lived as Sasuke came from behind with his sword drawn, pointed right at him. Chidori current. Sasuke exclaimed. Electricity traveled through his sword, and continued to travel even after the sword ended. The electrical sword pierced Naruto's heart, but he burst into smoke, again. Shadow clones again. Damn him. A fist to the face brought him out of thoughts, and down onto the floor. He tried to stand up, but a huge gust of air blew him away, falling right back into the river. Shadow clone technique. Sasuke heard from midair. Naruto looked at his clones with seriousness. You know what to do. The clones nodded, and jumped away leaving only Naruto and Sasuke there. Naruto closed his eyes, and took a deep breath, but to Sasuke, it was an open attack. It's like he wants me to finish him. He smirked at that, but then his face turned cold. I need more power. To be using Mangekyo so early, Sasuke's hand was suddenly encased in lightning as he shouted. Chidori Senbon. Tiny electrical needles raced towards the blonde, but he was prepared. A single clone burst with a loud poof, and got in between the attack, and his boss. He took all the attacks without poofing back into nothing, but Sasuke didn't stop there. Sasuke disappeared with a shushin, and reappeared behind the motionless blonde. He was prepared to strike him down when Naruto grabbed the blade with his bare hands. He opened his eyes, that resembled that of a toad, and gazed at the struggling shinobi. He snapped his blade in two, and threw his blade aside. Sasuke looked at him with wide eyes. That blade was made out of the strongest material in the elemental nations. How can his eyes? An eye bloodline. Sasuke didn't have the time to ponder much as Naruto punched him in the chest. It felt like I was punched by a building. Naruto grabbed the bowing raven by his hair, and threw him into the river, hard. Sasuke went spiraling down onto the cold, now hard, water below. A huge blast of water, followed by rain washed the place away. Sasuke coughed a few times as he heard a shout. Rasen Shuriken. Sasuke looked up to see the spinning ball of condensed wind hurling at him. Acting on impulse, Sasuke fired a low-level fire technique on the ball. But the ball absorbed it, but it transformed into a flaming spinning ball with condensed wind around. Sasuke cut of his chakra from his feet, and he went down into the water just when the ball impacted into the spot he was at. The ball exploded in a flash of light and flames, the wind ripped and shredded everything around the area where the ball impacted, the water splashed and splashed until a huge hole in between was ripped through. If you have seen Dragon Ball Z where Goku does Spirit Bomb on Frieza, the aftermath in the ocean where there is a gaping hole in the ocean, it's like that, but smaller. The force of the water was too much for the raven-haired shinobi, so he tried to swim back up, but the current pushed him further down until his head slammed into a wall. Hard. He lost his breath in a process, and his lungs filled with water as he tried to breathe. To die like this, he was prepared to shut his eyes, but as he did, his world was blinded by a light. Pathetic. Naruto grabbed the unconscious Uchiha by his hair, and pulled him up. He placed the unconscious teen on his right shoulder, and left. 46 minutes later, at the Leaf Village entrance gate, Naruto, with the unconscious teen still on his shoulder, walked into the entrance with his head walked right up to the gatekeepers, and said, "Mission accomplished. Akatsuki is no more." A cheer ran out from the few civilians who heard this. The cheer attracted the rest of the village, and so they checked it out. More and more of the villagers came to see what was the commotion. When there they joined in their fellow villagers' cheer repeating, "Hero! Hero!" Over and over again. Naruto, with the teen still over his shoulder, grinned like a fox, and rubbed his neck nervously. "It was nothing," he said. "I couldn't have done it without my fellow shinobi after all." The crowd cheered louder at his modesty, but a familiar flop of pink hair attracted his attention. Sakura, he thought. She burst through the crowd with worry in her eyes. "Where is he?" The crowd stopped as her voice stopped theirs. "I said, where is he?" She was beginning to sound desperate. They realized. She looked around the crowd until she spotted a familiar blonde-haired shinobi with a raven-haired shinobi on his shoulder. She ran up to them both with tears in her eyes. Naruto, expecting a hug, gently laid the down Uchiha onto the floor and opened his arms a bit, but he was extremely disappointed when she ran right past him and onto the floor where the Uchiha was at. She hugged his down form, further breaking his heart in the process, and kissed the Uchiha right in the cheeks, not caring about the crowd around them. Naruto looked at her with indifference, but on the inside he was crying. "We've been together for a few months. I thought we had something special." Naruto shook his head to get rid of those thoughts. She will not betray me. He gave one last look at the sobbing pink-haired girl Biofre turning away. Naruto turned around with his head high, and walked right through the crowd, even though the people around him patted him on the shoulders, and saying what a good job he had done. He felt alone. He felt betrayed. Deep inside him he knew she was lying to him when she told him that she loved him, and now he has to pay for it. Ignorance is a bliss. Naruto walked back into his apartment with his head down, his shoulders down. He had a pair of sake on each of his hands, and an angry expression on his face. She fucking betrayed me. Tears fell from his angry face, and he quickly slapped his palms onto his face. He slumped down onto the floor, and cried, remembering the betrayal she inflicted on him today. Flashback. Naruto turned the corner to walk to the apartment where Sakura moved in a couple of days ago. With flowers in his hands, he was prepared to take her out for dinner again, to treat her like a princess, a queen, a jewel. As he turned, however, he heard a giggle. He laughed to himself. He remembers who giggles like that. Sakura-chan, he thought with a smile, but his smile dropped as he peeked through the open door. Sasuke, giggle, UARH. Sasuke continued to attack her stomach, occasionally licking her belly button, as well as tickling her neck with his breath. Naruto's saliva got stuck on his throat as he continued to watch the scene unfold. No, he thought with dread. Give it to me, Sasuke. She practically begged for him. Sasuke gave a single glance to the open door where he caught Naruto's eyes watching their naked forms. He smirked, and mouthed a few words that Naruto caught. Of course Sakura-chan, I'll give it to you all night long. It was too much for the blonde, that he forced himself to look away. He clenched the flowers so hard that it burst into flame. He ran from the scene, with the feeling of betrayal on his back. Flashback end. Naruto looked up from his slouched position, and clenched his fist, remembering the words Sasuke mouthed to him. You beat me, I'll destroy you. Ah, God. The flop of blonde hair flew through the air, up, and down, side to side. The other blonde kept pushing, and pushing. Each thrust, harder than the previous one. Yes. The blonde one. Thrusting couldn't help, but grin, he pushed harder, and harder until he felt his leg give out. ARH. Shit. Not now. The blonde gritted his teeth, and kept thrusting even through the pain. The other blonde, with her hair flopping around, continued to moan as the blonde on top her kept plowing into her. Ah, I can't take it anymore. The blonde one top felt the wetness in her legs increase than normally. He realized, I made her come. He slowed down his pace as he continued to contemplate, that fast. He blinked as his rhythm slowed down to the point that the blonde in the bottom looked up with an angry expression. What are you doing? The shriek she gave out snapped the blonde out of his thoughts, and as a result pulled out of the already pissed blonde. Waha. Was his smart reply. The blonde in the bottom slowly got up from her position, and looked at the blonde with a raised eyebrow. She sighed, and grabbed his shoulder in an attempt to understand what's wrong. What's wrong? Now it was the other blonde's turn to be confused. What do you mean? He asks. I mean that you stopped all of a sudden, and it looked like you were thinking pretty hard. She laid her head back onto the bed, and put her hands under her head. The blonde was about to reply when he caught sight of her bare chest. He stuttered a few times, still looking at her chest, before clearing his throat. Nothing. He scratched the back of his head nervously. I am just surprised I made you come so early. The blonde blinked before snapping back forward, looking at her fellow blonde with a ticked mark expression on her face. That's it. He nodded. She sighed, and laid back down to the bed. You know, if it was anybody else, I'll probably would have kicked the guy out, and finished this myself. The twinkle in her eye didn't sit well with the other blonde, but since I love this so much, she grabbed his tool with force, and pulled it up a little. He gasped at her touch, and his cock pulsed a little. I am willing to make an exception, she finished with a grin. She laid back down onto the bed, and grabbed his hand. She guided his hand to touch her lips, and grabbed his waist with her other hand. Now, cock me. It was more of an order than a statement. Of course Ino, the blonde replied. He lined up his penis so close to her lips that it practically touched her lips with his tip. She gasped at his warmth. She growled. Next, Naruto. Hurry up. Naruto complied, and slammed into her. Not hard, but gently. She arched her back forward, and grabbed him by his shoulders. He grabbed her by her legs, and continued to slam into her. First soft, and slow, until finally the animal within took over. With each hard, rough, fast thrust, Ino cried out from both pleasure and pain. Her voice matched his rhythm with each thrust. He got tired, and plunged into her slower. Then when he started, he was breathing heavily, and Ino was gasping, and sweating like a pig. Ironic, if you get it. With one final hard slam, both blondes came. Naruto slumped into the bed, tired as hell, and Ino closed her eyes, remembering the pleasure she had just experienced. After a moment to catch their breath, Naruto slowly sat up, and turned to look at his fellow blonde. Ino, why did you decide to have with me? Ino opened her eyes, and looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. She sat up from the bed, and replied, What? I saw you looking depressed all of a sudden, and decided to cheer you up. With. He deadpanned. Well, you looked really depressed, so this was the only thing I could do to bring you out of it. She pulled the blanket over her chest to cover herself. Why? Naruto acts all of a sudden. The tone in his voice did not sit well with her. Why what? She was starting to get angry, but Naruto was being too stubborn over nothing to even realize it. Why go so far? For me, Ino sighed to herself, and slowly stood up from the bed. Because we're friends, Naruto. She walked into the bathroom, leaving Naruto there to think about what she said. Friends. Naruto chuckled to himself all of a sudden. Up until now, since Sakura's betrayal, I've been isolating myself from my friends. Never actually seen them as friends either. Naruto thought with a sigh. He got up from the bed, and walked up to pick up his discarded pants that he threw last night. But first, he grabbed his boxers and put it on. He grabbed his pants next, followed by his shirt. He put both on as fast as he could, and was about to leave when something clicked. Out walked Ino, from the bathroom, with a towel wrapped around her chest all the way to her legs. She gave him a smirk, and walked seductively to the blonde with a sway of her hips. She got real close to his chest, and placed a single finger onto his shirt, that he just put on. She traced her finger down his shirt, and stopped to look at him from the corner of her eyes. Where you going? She asks. She continued to trace circles around his shirt hoping to get some kind of reaction. Places, he replied. He wasn't very used to Ino's attention, so of course he'll be nervous all of sudden. Even if they had, it made it much worse, much worse. Come on baby. She leaned in closer to his ear. We're lovers now, aren't we? There was a tiny bit of fear in her voice when she said the last part, fear of rejection. Lovers. Naruto swallowed the lump on his throat when she said that. He wasn't ready to be part of a relationship so fast, not after what she did. After all, it's been 3 days since then. He wasn't emotionally prepared for another betrayal, if that happens. Ino walked around Naruto's still body for a second before clapping her hands cheerfully. Of course, silly. Or do you think I will just have with you just to cheer you up? Ino raised an eyebrow at his sweaty form. Then you weren't trying to cheer me up. Ino rolled her eyes at his stupidity. Then why? Well, she began. Like I said, we're friends. But, no. Let me finish. Like I said, we are friends. But deep down Ino hesitated a bit. Come on, Ino. How hard is it to say I love you? Ino bit her lip. Naruto continued to hear as Ino struggled to formulate the words that she wanted to say, but she just couldn't. What? He was getting a little impatient. He thought that she was going to say something important, but she just keeps repeating the same thing over and over again. I. Listen, Ino, I don't have time for this. He walked up to door and grabbed the handle. Just as he was about to open the door, he turned to look back at Ino's frozen form and smiled at her. A real smile, a genuine one. Thanks, Ino, for cheering me up. He turned back around and opened the door. He raised his hand into the air and made some hand sign that said, "See y'all later." Ino stood there, frozen for what seemed to be eternity, until she snapped out of her self-induced shock. Her eyes saddened, and her posture slumped. Love you. She turned back around to the direction into the bathroom, and slammed the door shut. A single tear drop fell onto the floor. Naruto walked through the streets of Konoha with a cheerful expression on his face. He whistled a few times until his jaw started hurting. He passed several villagers that waved at him happily, and some of his local admirers that wanted an autograph. He signed a few before continuing on his way. As he walked, he bumped into someone when he wasn't looking. Oh, sorry about that. He got up before dusting himself up first. He looked down to see who he bumped into. Hinata. Is that you? I haven't seen you since. Peens, in, VA, Scion. He gulped, remembering her confession she told him. How are you? He scratched his neck nervously. Hinata looked up, and her eyes hardened a bit, but she replaced her look with a gentle one. It's him, she thought. Her thoughts a little dark than usual. She masked her anger, and calmed down a little. Hien Naruto-kun. God, I hate acting like this, but I need to do it. Hinata pressed her fingers together, and looked down, her hair covering her face. Hi Hinata. Naruto stuttered as well. He looked at her, and his eyes softened. Flashback. Because I've always watched you, admired you from a distance. The wind blew in her face, while Naruto looked at her with wide eyes. What is she trying to say? I love you. She rushed forward with speed he did not expect her to possess, and was blown back with twice the force. He heard her scream of pain, and his heart broke. Hinata. Flashback end. I should give her a chance. Hinata slightly looked up to see Naruto's struggling body. Yes. She stuttered. She mentally gave herself a pat on the back for her performance. How would you like to get some ramen? It wasn't easy as it seemed, but he did it. I asked her out. Did he just ask me out? Hinata blinked a little, and lost her composure outside. She gained an angry look, and replied, what did you say? She realized what she said, and how she said it, and because of that she covered her mouth, and looked down onto the ground again. Idiot. How can you? I said if you want to go get some ramen. Now it was a little easier to say than last time. Naruto, though, was a little shaken by her outburst. Was she this loud? Hinata blushed, and nodded furiously. Yes, and Naruto K-kun. It was soft, and almost whisper-like, but Naruto heard her perfectly. He nodded, and grabbed her by the hand. She blushed. For real this time? Oh, God. He's holding my hand. She shook her head. Have to get rid of these feelings. I must have my revenge for what he did to me. Let's go then. He gave her a soft, gentle smile. that made her blush again, and led her to the ramen shop, 2 streets down. I am really bored, to almost no inspiration for this part, so quick summary, he takes her to ramen shop. They talk. She giggles. More dark thoughts out of Hinata. Naruto had a good time, and Hinata pretended to have a good time. Now they are going home. Naruto is walking her home. Naruto grabbed Hinata's soft white hands, and took her out her seat. He was trying to be romantic, she realized, but he's trying too hard. Fool, like darkness, her thoughts were. She complied, and allowed him to take her out of her seat. She stood up, and looked at him with a blush. I had a good time, Hinata. He smiled softly at her. She repeated his action, but not as soft as his. He realized this, and frowned. Are you not having a good time, Hinata? He sounded a little defeated, and that made her smile, on the inside. She blushed at his attention, and shook her head furiously. No Naruto K-kun. Had a great tea time. She said a little too quickly. Naruto nodded at her response, and led the way to her house. What neither of them noticed, was that Ino was looking at them with a downcast expression, and slightly betrayed. Too late, maybe. While walking, Naruto decided to talk, breaking up the uncomfortable silence that hanged in the air. Hinata. She looked at his face, she looked right at his deep sky blue eyes, and promptly lost herself, gazing right in his eyes. Are you mad at me for not talking to you after Peen's attack? She snapped out of her trance, and looked away. Why ask that now? She was starting to get angry, and she didn't want to get angry, or else risk losing her plan. She continued to look down at the ground, neither responding, nor looking back at Naruto's concern slightly hurt Naruto's form. They arrived at the Hyuga compound a few minutes later. With an awkward silence, Naruto looked ahead, while Hinata looked down, both completely out of it, and both lost in their own thoughts. Naruto stopped right in front of the gate. Hinata snapped out of her thoughts, and was prepared to go in when Naruto continued to hold onto her hand. She stopped, and turned to look at him. Hinata. Hinata tilted a little at his tone of voice. Naruto's words were caught in his throat, as he watched Hinata's tilted head under the moonlight. So beautiful, he blinked as he just realized this now. Why did I just realize this now? Do you want to get some ramen tomorrow? Hinata was shocked. She didn't expect him to ask him out again, and for some reason she got all giggly inside. She felt excited. Sure, Naruto-kun. She stuttered, for real this time. She realized this, and looked at herself in shock. Naruto cracked a smile, and hugged her. Unexpected. She blushed at his touch, and she just responded with a pat on the back, an awkward one, but Naruto was too happy to even notice this, and released her. He pumped his arm up in the air, earning a small giggle from Hinata, and ran off. Not without saying goodbye. Hinata waved at his retreating form, and smiled. She thought about the events that occurred today, and blushed, and passed out. 4 months later, Nakatoshi District. Naruto walked through the village with a smile on his face. Even though Sakura betrayed him, he was happy to find someone as awesome as Hinata. He walked through the busy streets with his hands inside of his pockets, and his head high in the air. He felt as though nothing could stop him. He turned the corner, and his jaw dropped, his eyes bulged, and his heart broke, once more. Hinata was in the arms of another man. Her lips were meeting the man's lips. She looked happy, happier than when she was with Hinata. Naruto shook his head, and approached the pair, with anger. Hinata. Hinata snapped her head, to see an angry Naruto walking up to her, and the guy. Naruto. She stuttered. Shit. The man realized the situation he was in, and ran. But Naruto didn't care if he ran, he just kept walking up to Hinata, with an angry face. Why? His face changed from angry to betrayed, in an instant. Hinata looked at him, and said, I don't know, something inside of me. Why? Naruto pretended that she didn't talk, and repeated the question a little louder this time. Hinata just squirmed under his gaze, and mumbled a few words, that he didn't understand, or chose not to. Why? You said you love me. Why? Something inside of her snapped, when Hinata heard him say, you said you love me. She snapped. Something inside her snapped. She snapped her head so fast to look at his form with fury in her lavender pupil-less eyes. Why? Why? She shouted louder than the blonde. The blonde stopped his shout, and listened to her, because. When I told you that I love you, what did you do? You went with that pink-haired slut. I actually thought that you'll respond, but you didn't. You didn't even talk to me. Bu. His reply was weak. No. Then after she cheats on you with that fucking Uchiha, you come crawling to me. Look, I am a fucking rebound or something. That's a lie. He shouted back. No. It's true. But you're too stupid to know it. You only stayed with me to fill your own void. You bastard. Why should I stay with a man who doesn't love me? Hinata's eyes blazed with anger as she continued to spill her heart out. For a while I was happy. I even stopped my plan to kill you. Her voice softened a little, but turned back into anger. But I realized I was wrong. I should have fucking killed you. I never love you, and I will never, ever love you. That's why I cheated on you 5 times already. She realized what she said in the end, and covered her mouth. Naruto gasped, and his expression changed. He gave her a blank expression before responding. I see. You only wanted to hurt me. He walked away right there. Hinata tried to say something, but she couldn't. Something was wrong. He turned his back to her, and said, for what it's worth, I am sorry for the pain I caused you without even knowing. He left the district, not bothered about the crowd around them that watched the exchange. Hinata's eyes shimmered, and she fell to her knees. Naruto heard her cry of pain, but his pain was even harder. The pain of betrayal. Naruto. The man in question merely wiped his face. Tears stained his hand when he looked up. Oh, HK Kurenai-sensei. She gave him a frown. What's wrong? Naruto gave the red-eyed woman a shake of his head. Nothing, he whispered. Kurenai gave him a disbelieving stare. Naruto, come on, talk to me. She sat down next the blonde. What can I say? He grumbled to himself. Kurenai patted him on the back. She sighed. Naruto. He looked at her. Come with me. I am OOKS sensei. IP promise. Naruto. She sighed. You don't have to call me sensei. And come on, show me your smiling face. He gave her a nervous, slightly choked laugh. He broke down right there. Kurenai saw right through him. She gave him a pitied frown. It's all right, Naruto. Here, come with me. Naruto choked a little, and pushed his arm forward to keep the tears in place. Naruto couldn't even nod. It broke Kurenai's heart to see him like this. He used to be so energetic and happy, but now he seems sadder than he was as a kid. Come follow me. Naruto, shaking, stood up and followed the red-eyed woman. I am pathetic as a man. Why did you bring me to your apartment Senkai Kurenai? Naruto corrected himself. To see this, she responded. She opened the door to her apartment, and led him through the living room. She pointed at the couch, and he understood the gesture. He nervously sat down the couch, and dried his stained face. Man up, Naruto. Come on. Even if he tried to reassure himself, depression still hit harder. He grabbed a tissue from the table in front and blew his nose. He finished wiping himself as Kurenai came in with an infant, a baby. This is. Naruto's heart took a tingle of guilt at the sight of the child. After all, he was responsible for the death of his father, and he didn't even bother to help the mother through her hardships as a result. Hokage. He chuckled. I can't be Hokage if I can't take care of those I am responsible for. He shook his head. Yes, this is Asuma-kun's child. Our child. She smiled softly at the baby. She ran her fingers through the baby's hair, waking it up in the process. The baby made a squeak, and began to cry. Naruto stood up, all thoughts lost, and walked up to Kurenai. See, can I hold him? He asks. She looked hesitant, but nodded. He grabbed the baby as gently as he can, and placed him close to his chest. He rocked the baby. Hey little guy. The baby stopped his crying, and looked at the blonde with curiosity in his deep brown eyes. How you doing? He cooed. The baby giggled. Kurenai just shook her head at their antics. She walked to the door, and opened it. She gave one last glance at them, and left with a smile in her face. He's a natural father. She giggled when she remembered how baby Asuma grabbed the blonde from his hair, earning a cry of pain. A great father. To Naruto, this was a new experience. Never had he actually seen a baby, a real one. The only ones he had ever seen were the little 5 to 8-year-old children. But that's it. So playing with the baby made an impression on the blonde. He felt as though the world itself stopped, and rotated back the other way. He simply felt at ease, like nothing can stop him, nor bring him down. He remembered the countless trials and hardships he had experienced in his short life. But why can't I end it? Countless dreams of what-ifs, always bursting through his head, to end it all as nothing but cowardism. He felt old, odd even, the burden that is gone a second ago, replaced with an even stronger one. He took a look at the long since asleep baby, and smiled to himself, a small smile that turned into a frown. What is Kurenai-san doing? Naruto took in his surroundings for the first time since he arrived. Her apartment was simply put normal, a slightly spacious living room. Enough for at least 4 people. She had a bookshelf filled with books, a desk with decorations of red and white silk attached on top. He ran his fingers through the fabric, and sighed in content, so soft, but, he turned his attention to the closed window. He heard a shifting of leaves outside, and the constant echoing of footsteps beating on the dirt road. He walked up to the window, as silently as he could so he wouldn't wake up the baby, and opened it slightly. However, the window made a creaking noise when opened slightly. He winced, and took a glance at the baby. He sighed in relief, and opened the window in one good swoop. The resounding bang of the window echoed through the apartment and outside, in which resulted in the baby waking up. Naruto. Kurenai asked from below the apartment window, but the sounds of her baby's cries blocked out her question. She sighed in irritation, and walked up the steps to her apartment. She heard Naruto curse through her door, and she giggled at that. She opened the door as gracefully as she could, and she was greeted with a very odd scene. Naruto was on the floor with water dripping down his face, and the baby itself had an evil smile on his face. The thing is that the baby had his baby pajamas down. She put 2 to 2 together and came with a conclusion: he pissed on him. She slapped her mouth shut to keep her giggles in check, but her muffed giggles turned into full-blown laughter. Why you, ha 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 ha, got pissed on. Naruto gave her a blank stare, and wiped his face with a deadpan expression on his face. Hardy har har. Very funny, he replied sarcastically. She walked up to the 2, and gently picked up the baby. She was about to coo at the baby, but he pissed on her right there. Now look who got pied on, he said dryly. He burst out laughing at her face. And she is well followed. The baby himself merely giggled, a very weird giggle. Even when the 2 adults stopped their laughter, the baby continued to giggle. He glanced at both adults' faces with giggles still escaping his mouth. Your baby is very. He took a glance to Kurenai's face, and saw her raised eyebrow. He could somehow see the warning behind those red eyes, so deciding not to test his luck, he finished with, special. He hoped she didn't catch the double meaning in that. Kurenai nodded at his response, oblivious to his actual meaning, and cleared her throat. Naruto, he turned to her. I want to thank you for looking after little Asuma. Naruto merely waved at her, and grabbed the baby's small finger. No, I should be the one thanking you. His eyes turned soft, for cheering me up, so thank you. Kurenai shook her head. Naruto, I just wanted a babysitter, and since you were the only one I found. Naruto sweat dropped at her. Oh, well thanks anyways. He was about to leave when he turned to look at her. Can I come back to see him? Kurenai smiled. Sure if you want, but you have to be his babysitter for when I go out. Naruto nodded from her response. Sure. Just as he was about to leave, the baby made a grab motion to his form. The baby squeaked and started to cry, still holding his small chubby arm forward in a grab motion. Wah! The baby cried, almost trying to reach out to the blonde. Kurenai tried her best to consult the baby, but to no avail. She looked back at Naruto's retreating form, outside the window, and sighed, good father indeed. 6 months, 21 days, 4 hours, 3 minutes, 54 seconds later. Many things happened as a result of that encounter. Naruto, as he was promised, visited the baby, named Gio. Every day, as much as he could, he hanged around Kurenai and her son a lot. And that had people wondering if they were going out. People of course approved, but were concerned for the blonde. If he got hurt again like last time, whenever he didn't have a mission he would visit Gio, just to spend time with him. Kurenai constantly looked at the scene involving the blonde teen, almost man, and her 1-year-old, with a soft smile, but as time passed their relation began to expand to an all-new level. It became from student and sensei to equals, and from that friends, that transformed into lovers as time passed by. Occasionally the people of Konoha would see both out in the streets, eating, dancing, playing, or just plain hanging out. They looked happy, content. A smile was always present on their faces, but to some, they could distinctly see the doubts in the red-eyed woman. People murmured to each other about that. However, Naruto never heard about it. Kurenai-chan. Kurenai blinked and looked outside her apartment window. Naruto. She questioned. Naruto smiled at her, and jumped from the dirt road below, and landed in her roof, upside down. Don't do that. Kurenai scolded. Naruto kept up his goofy attitude, and pulled her into a kiss, but the sounds of the one-year-old's Geo cries stopped them from making contact. She placed a finger to Naruto's mouth, and whispered to his ear, sorry. He shivered at her tone, maybe next time. Naruto's shoulders slumped, but his expression remained the same. I'll be back, Kurenai-chan. Kurenai called out from the other room, where you going? Naruto ran his hand through his greasy blonde hair. Tsunade-sama gave me a mission, said it'll be about 2 weeks long. Kurenai peeked her head from the room. 2 weeks. Why so long? He scratched the back of his head nervously. To protect this one chick from something. Forgot the details. She giggled at that. Well, alright. Naruto nodded, and said, see you. Love you. Kurenai didn't even bother to return the gesture. She bit her lip. Is what I am doing wrong? No. Despite her own reassuring, she didn't believe herself. With Naruto. She's going to betray you like the others. No, she's not. Sigh. Listen, you stupid moron. Didn't you see the doubt in her eyes when you're together with her? One way or an. Shut up. You can't, cause you know it's true. Stop. I believe in her, and so, she'll never betray me. Well then, if you end up with a broken heart once more, don't cry. Naruto cut his connection off from the Kyubi as he hopped through the trees. He continued his 3-day journey through the Konoha forest into the Valley of the End. He arrived right at the valley with a large thud. He looked down at the ravine with distaste, and frowned. Do not remember that betrayal, Naruto. You're better than this. He shook his head to get himself straight. He gathered chakra into his legs and jumped over the large ravine. He landed at the other side, and took a glance at the place where his trouble and heartaches started. Valley of the End indeed, nothing but trouble. He shrugged to himself, as if he didn't care. But he did care. He cared a lot about his feelings. It wouldn't be right without them. However, he had an eerie impression that without his feelings hell be better. Better for what's to come. Naruto arrived 5 miles away from Cloud Village. He found a nearby town, and decided that maybe his client might be there. He shrugged, and his cold look appeared in his face. He had to. After all, over the years he developed his own mask. His true mask. A mask with emotion, without expression, and without nothing. He walked through town, with a blank expression on his face, and sat down in a stool that served ramen. Chef. He called out. I'll take 3 bowls of ramen. The chef in question turned his head to look at his costumer, and smiled. Sure, kid. I'll get your food out in a jiffy. Naruto scoffed at being called a kid, but decided to swallow his pride, and not act like one. After all, who argues back about being a kid? Kids, that's who. Naruto calmed down, if only slightly, and looked around the establishment with wonder. He turned his head to his right, and saw no one. However, to his left he saw a gorgeous, not that he'll admit it out loud, white-haired lady, not gray, but white as in snow. She had beautiful, captivating red eyes that just seemed so infectious that at first glance you might just faint. She had all the right curves in all the right places, that made even the gaze straight. She had a heart-shaped face that screamed cute. However, what caught his attention was her facial expression. Anger, hate, loneliness, and that of betrayal. He was about to check her out more when the chef came back in with 3 hot steaming bowls of ramen in hand. Order up. He called out. He placed the meal in front of the blonde, and he eagerly accepted it. He grabbed the chopsticks, and snapped them in half. As he ate though, he continuously glanced at the white-haired beauty across from him. She noticed this, and decided to voice her concern. Why do you keep looking at me like that? She said a little too coldly. Naruto swallowed the ramen that was in his mouth, and nervously replied, Wait. You're a Konoha ninja, right? Naruto nodded vigorously, slightly surprised that she lost a little of her coldness. He puffed out his chest as in trying to impress her. Yep. I am the powerful Naruto Uzumaki. The white-haired woman frowned at his attitude, and turned to look away. She spoke with a cold aura. Why did they send a fool like you? Doesn't matter now. I am Yukina, your client you're supposed to protect. Naruto's ego deflated at her hurtful jab. You know I really don't have to help you. I can always go back, he threatened, but Yukina didn't even blink. Is that so? Naruto blinked at her lack of concern, then the truth of Konoha ninjas always completing their mission is a lie, eh? Such a shame. Naruto's eyebrow twitched, knowing that she beat him in that. Alright then, what do you want? Yukina narrowed her red eyes. If she wasn't so cold, and indifferent to others than to Naruto, she'll look really pretty. Fuck, who was he kidding? She looks even better like that. Didn't you read your mission scroll? I asked for protection. From who though? He shot back, a little annoyed at her. My Claw X clan. She corrected herself with hatred and malice sweeping into every word she said. Naruto frowned, but that turned into confusion. X clan. What's wrong, Wa? As she read his own mind, she replied. Nothing happened. Naruto shivered at her tone. So cold, no wonder why she's called Yukina. Alright then. Naruto said. He sat next to her, and finished his ramen. He paid for his, and just as he was about to order another one, Yukina stood up, and called to him. Come on. He gritted his teeth at the way she said it. It wasn't more of a said, but an order. He begrudgingly stood up from his seat and gave the chef a smile. Thanks, old man. The old man scoffed at his comment of old man but reluctantly let go. Yukina and Naruto walked out the small ramen stand. The wind blew right in their face, making their hair stand up from the tough breeze. So you're Naruto. By the tone in which she spoke was meant for sarcasm, clearly didn't show, but he caught it. And what is it to you? He asked, annoyed. Nothing. But I need your help. Naruto rolled his eyes. Clearly, I haven't noticed. Yukina frowned at his words but chose to ignore him. I need your help in destroying my clan. Naruto turned his head to look at her. He snorted, and turned away. Crazy bitch, he mumbled. Yukina, as always, chose to ignore his comment about her, and continued her talk. As I was saying, you need to help me destroy my clan, understood? She got right in his face, and continuously poked his chest. With each jab, Naruto winced. And why would I waste my time doing something like that? And besides, we have an alliance. I doubt that they'll allow me to kill off a clan. Yukina chuckled darkly at that. No. You see my clan is full of traitors, traitors to Cloud Village. If that's true, then why haven't you been CA? I was getting to that. Don't interrupt next time. Or else, she sneered at him. Like I was saying, we hid in the forest not too far from here. To make sure no one finds us, we placed a very, very powerful genjutsu that makes the person see an illusion of what they are actually seeing. Naruto narrowed his eyes at that. But those fools banished me for. Yukina stopped right there. She didn't want to give away why exactly she was banished, but that was enough for the blonde raise suspicion. But I was hired to protect you, not destroy a clan. He had a smile on his face when he said that, but Yukina's smile brought a shiver into his very being. Yes, but I'll be attacking them as well, so you have no choice but to protect me while I know we attack them. Naruto knew he lost. Damn, having to protect her while she destroys her clan. She got me. Alright then. She smirked at his defeated face, but she realized what she was doing and forced her composure back into place. An emotionless, expressionless face. She turned her back on the blonde, and said in a cold voice, let's go. Naruto knew, however, that she's just putting up a front. Question is, for what? No matter. Hell, find out exactly why though, sooner or later, and sooner sounds just about right. Yukina came to a stop right in front of a tree. The tree in particular had beads around it, and the barks had little tiny bells attached to it. Each leaf had a color right at the tip. Very suspicious if you thought about it. Here it is, Yukina stated coldly. Naruto nodded, and approached her. So why you stop? She looked at him for a second before turning her attention to the tree. This is exactly where the genjutsu is manipulated by. I see, Naruto mumbled to himself. This genjutsu, she began, is manipulated through these beads. The beads detect if a person entered the area, and send signals to the bells. The bells transmit a sound that affects the colors on the leaves, and from there, the combination between the sound and the color blind the person of both hearing and vision, resulting in his or her disillusion. Naruto's brain registered what she said, but what if they notice it? Yukina gave him a cold stare. No, the tree senses ill feelings to itself and the area around it, so no matter what you get affected. To top it off, the victim only has 5 seconds to realize he already been hit, but those 5 seconds already affect their brains, leaving them disillusionized. Naruto gave her a disbelieving stare before shaking his head. Alright, so what you going to do to take it out? Yukina glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. Me. Nothing. You're going to do it. Naruto protested already. No way. How can I do that? Yukina gave a shake off her head. Is he really so stupid? I told you. No ill intent. That means that you'll be able to, seeing as you don't really care. Naruto glanced at her, and sighed, fine, but I won't like it. Naruto walked up to the beads attached to the tree, and stared at it. Sorry tree, but I have to do this. Naruto grabbed the beads, and pulled, but as he did a bell that was attached to the tree grew in size, and fell from the bark. It accelerated at a constant speed, thanks to gravity, and almost hit the dazed blonde. He recovered though just in time to dodge the huge bell. Yukina's eyes widened, and yelled, don't let it touch the ground. But it was too late, huh? Yukina looked at the bell as it rang through the trees, and through the forest. Fuck. Now they know we're here. Naruto cursed at himself. Damn. I am getting too rusty. Naruto, let's move. Naruto though for second that she was actually worried, but he quickly shrugged that off. It's not the time to think of that. After all, he is about to have a big fight. A single man sat on the floor in a lotus position. He had an air superiority around him, and a face that screamed arrogant. He had very dark hair, almost pitch black. He opened his eyes at the sound of the bell. Two shining silver eyes, to be exact. He stood up, and cracked his neck with a loud snap that echoed throughout his room all the way to the halls. He looked fairly old, about 43 to 47 years old to be exact. He dusted himself up, and walked to his door. He slid it open, and walked out. He glanced at the compound, and saw almost every shinobi at his disposal front and center. He gave them all a cold look. It seems we have intruders for the first time. Everybody present shivered at his tone. Most of the younger ones began to sweat. No matter. He paced around his front porch. They will be dead. Is that understood? Everybody nodded, but he didn't seem satisfied. I said, is that understood? They all stood up and bowed. Hi. Kirin-sama. When they all disappeared in a flash of light, he chuckled a very demented chuckle, and his chuckle turned into a full-blown laughter. Mawahahaha. Soon they will all fear the power of the blind. Yukina reappeared in front of a large castle-like compound. The area around her shimmered, and Naruto appeared next to her. He glanced at her, and said, well, do your thing, but do not kill innocents, he warned, but she shook her head. No, she replied coldly, there is much to blame as the ones here. Naruto looked at her for a second, before shaking his head. If that's how you think, then I can't help you. Yukina turned to look at the blonde with anger in her red eyes. What? She hissed. You are going to help me. It was more of a demand than a statement, he realized. Naruto shook his head. Again, sorry, but I have morals, and this is not one of them. He began, if you just want to kill the ones who are actually responsible, then that's okay, but innocents? No, he responded coldly. She flinched at his stare. She enforced her glare, hoping that she'll have it her way. But Naruto wouldn't budge. She angrily gritted her teeth, and replied, fine, but you have to really help me, she hissed out. Naruto smiled at her, and nodded, all right, lead the way. She did. They passed several shinobi, but thanks to the genjutsu Yukina put on beforehand, they were able to get through undetected. They arrived at the main compound, that resembled that of a huge mansion castle, and walked in. The first step Yukina took was greeted with a blast of white lightning. She dodged in time, but the figure appeared in front of her and slammed her down into the floor. She gasped in pain. Meanwhile, Naruto blinked and was thrown to the other side of the room. He hit the wall in a big explosion that resonated against the castle mansion. He looked up, and saw a white-haired man approaching him. Why are you helping that whore? He didn't like the way he said it. It sounded disgusted as he spoke. What do you mean? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the white-haired man. His hair was so long that his hair covered his eyes. That girl is nothing but a whore. It sounded as a whisper, but the mere way in which he said it echoed into the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. Before he could question why, the white-haired man beat him to the punch. Let me tell you why. Flashback. Father. Stop. You're hurting me. The white-haired man snared at Yukina. Hurting you. I am hurting you. You're the one who hurt me with this. He pointed at the bulge in her stomach. You're pregnant. Yukina's eyes shimmered with tears. But she didn't get to her sentence because her father slapped her. You know the rules. Before marriage is forbidden. And worst yet, you're pregnant. What if they see you like this? They will point and laugh at us. A disgrace would be stained upon our name because of you. Yukina backed away from her father with each and every word he said. Do you realize what this means for me? I worked hard. Hard for all of us. And what do? You get out of my sight. Yukina looked at her father and shook. She tried to explain but her father didn't even let her speak. He hates me. Anger and bitter Yukina sneered at him. I told you. It wasn't my fault. Her father raised his hand and slammed it into her stomach. She doubled over in pain. She rolled in the ground with sweat pouring down her face. Don't you ever talk to me like that again. He grabbed her by her hair and threw her out of the house. The last thing she heard before the door shut was, whore. Flashback end. So that's what happened, but she's your daughter. Rules are stupid, but your daughter. The white-haired man shook his head disapprovingly. I know you'll understand, but I guess I was wrong. He took a stance. Come, he gestured. Hello Yukina. Yukina whipped her head to the left. She swore she heard someone whisper in her ear. She groggily stood up and placed her hand into the floor. Damn, I didn't EV. She was cut off from her train of thoughts when he walked out of the shadow. Kiran. She snared. He took a mock hurt face on. Oh Yukina, you wound me so. He smirked at her expression. He was about to continue when a person came crashing in front of him. Kujak. He acts. In response the white-haired man rose from the ground. Kiran, he greeted back, but once he saw his daughter he snared. Yukina. A yellow flash appeared next to the white-haired girl, Naruto. She asked sincerely. Yukina, he greeted back. Kiran smirked at this. It seems fate has plans for us, eh? Naruto shook his head. No, you brought this upon yourself. We're here. Naruto chirped happily. Yukina smiled softly at that. Her heart slightly fluttered at his smile. Her body tingled when he took her by the hand. Come on, I just have to show you around. It's been 5 days since the fight in Yukina's ex-clan. They arrived in Konoha just now 3 days later. After the fight, Yukina had nowhere else to go. So Naruto offered her to come to Konoha as a new place to live in. But she politely declined, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So he convinced her to come until she finally relented. He promised to show her around town first, but first. You just have to meet her. She's awesome. Without her, it'll probably be emo. She giggled at that. He always knew how to make her laugh, even through their short time together. Yukina knew that he was a good guy. No, a great guy. But her smile disappeared and was replaced with a jealous one. I feel sad, but whoever has him has to be lucky. They arrived at Kurenai's apartment a few minutes later. Naruto practically dragged the white-haired beauty to the front porch. Come, I'll show you to her. And Gio. He opened the door. His nose wiggled a little at the smell. Smells like no. Naruto walked calmly through the living room. Even though Yukina could say that he's troubled, and stopped in front of Kurenai's door, he took a deep breath and opened it. He instantly shut the door. The image forever engraved in his mind. Come on Yukina, let's get out of here. Yukina was about to protest when he snapped at her. Now. She scampered over to him, and winced. He never snapped at me, even when I was cold, so why? The answer hit her when she turned and saw Kurenai run out the door, with the bed sheets wrapped around her body, covered in sweat, and Naruto wait. It's not what you think. Naruto stopped. I don't care. I knew deep down this might happen, so I prepared. Kurenai gave him a very wet teary-eyed stare. I am sorry, but I told you it's alright. Naruto continued to walk, but he continued to hear Kurenai's voice. You know this would have never worked out. I am older than you. So that means I can't. Naruto interrupted. I said it's alright. He glanced at her, and flashed her a pained smile. I knew you would have never considered at me as such, but I foolishly believed that you might have been the one. But goodbye Kurenai. He walked away. Yukina looked sad, and slightly mad at the scene. Naruto. I am sorry. She knew she had nothing to apologize for, but deep down she thought it was partially her fault for not convincing him not to come. But she relented to his charm, and now, she gave a glare at the red-eyed witch, and ran up to catch up to the blonde. Naruto. She called out, but Naruto didn't stop. He continued to walk in depression, and called out, Yukina. Leave me alone. I want to be alone. Yukina stopped. She could at least do that, but she had a bad feeling. I am going to get a drink. I told you that shell cheat, but I know now, shut up. Naruto-kun. Waking up, the first thing Naruto did was grab his head. Fuck, he thought, the pain of a hangover getting to him. I drank too much, but it sure felt good. He clenched his fist, but relaxed a second later. It wouldn't do well for him to bitch over a breakup. Well, he wouldn't call it a breakup but more of a lie. That's what all his relationships have been so far. A lie. The lie brought happiness, even if it was short-lived compared to the other two. This one was a little longer. But still, it hurts. It hurts a lot. Not as much as the first or second though. The only regret he has is, Geo. Hell miss the little guy. Just thinking of him brought a smile to his face. However, that was short-lived when his head pulsed in pain. Fucking hangovers. Can't we think of something to get rid of that? Seriously. His movement in bed caused another to stir. A woman to be exact. Naruto, curiosity etched in his face, looked to his side and promptly paled. Anko. He stuttered in his head. He, of course, wasn't expecting this. What the fuck did he do yesterday? And why Anko of all people? Shit. I am screwed. Naruto. Anko mumbled in her sleep. Naruto sighed in relief. After all, it wouldn't do well for him to get caught. She might go ape shit on him. So, doing the next best thing, Naruto slowly slipped out of the covers and stood up. As he stood, he winced when he felt his ass start to hurt. What the fuck? Don't tell me she didn't. Indeed she did. He looked at Anko's side and there in the counter was a dildo. How did this happen? Naruto thought with dread, his face paler than a ghost's. Reminiscing, Naruto eventually found the memory he was looking for. Another shot. But make it double, Naruto said with a slur in his voice. The bartender looked at the blonde with a raised eyebrow and shook his head. He already figured out what happened. Well, judging by his face, that is. Got dumped. The bartender asked Naruto. After a few seconds of not answering, the bartender just pulled out his sake bottle and poured it to the sake cup in Naruto's hand, and at another one he pulled out recently. Here ya go, the bartender said gently. Drink till ya drop, boy. I am sure you need it. Naruto nodded slowly and raised his cup in a toast way. Thanks, he replied lowly, and in a whisper-like manner. The blonde pulled the cup close to his face, smelled it, allowing the sweet smell of alcohol to enter his nostrils, like the tip of the cup, and then gulped it in one go. A fresh awe escaped his mouth, followed by a sigh. What's wrong, Foxy? A voice asked from behind as Naruto gulped his second sake cup. Without turning around, he replied, Anko. Sitting down, Anko turned to the bartender and held up 2 fingers. With a nod, the bartender pulled out a fresh cup and poured it in her and Naruto's cup as Anko turned to face Naruto with a lewd smile. So, she said cutely, what's a guy like you doing here? Shouldn't you be with Kurenai? Nope, was his simple reply. Yet, Anko could still feel Naruto's sadness from his aura, whatever the fuck that is. As weird as she felt by the reply though, she felt nothing towards the blonde, nor about his issues. With a shrug, Anko grabbed her drink from the table and sipped it once. Tangy, she said, licking her lips. One last gulp. She glanced at Naruto. Still, like others towards the blonde, she felt the need to help the guy, whether if it's his personality or something else. She just felt the need to help him, but the question was, how? She couldn't exactly talk to him. That was not her forte. More along the lines of interrogation though was different, so, talking was out of the picture. Anko looked at him over once more before turning her attention to his sake cup. She slowly toyed with it before she glanced back at Naruto. He has grown more mature, that's for sure. Maybe. With that thought in mind, Anko turned her attention to the expressionless, yet drunk, blonde next to her. Wanna do it? Anko asked casually. Seemed slutty to some, but as the best way to ease tension and to ease the heart, or so they told, to her. Normally, Naruto would either refuse, or stutter a response to deny. But since alcohol has influenced his senses, making him think irrationally, he replied, let's go. He drank his last cup and grabbed Anko by her wrist, and disappearing in a swirl of leaves seconds later. Naruto blinked. Oh, he said flatly. Then he promptly fainted. A few minutes later, Naruto slowly rubbed his ass and opened his eyes. He winced as he stood and quietly grabbed his clothes to not wake the still sleeping Anko. He opened the door and left, his asshole hurting with each step he took. Tired and a little shaken, Naruto thought of one thing. I need a drink. Not as if that was obvious. Gathering the necessary amount of chakra, Naruto teleported away and right into the front of his bar. He walked in as gracefully as he could and was about to order when he saw someone he didn't expect nor he didn't want to see. His eyes hardened almost dangerously. Stop, Naruto, he thought to himself, his will close to breaking, and every ounce of anger snapping. Deep breath. Gotha, take a deep breathe, no use in wasting energy over this. Naruto, said the one. He absolutely dread this. He was sure he would encounter her later on in life, but now, it's already too late. He tried to compose himself as best as he could, but to no avail, he couldn't. And then, he snapped. What? Naruto. The person stuttered, clearly not comprehending what the fuck his matter is. Deep breath. Why, yes. Naruto said, clenching his teeth in anger. His eyes looked at her with murder, but she didn't catch that. She looked a little sad and ashamed for some reason, though Naruto didn't bother to notice, or rather he doesn't want to. The female rose from his seat and slowly walked up to the blonde with a sake bottle in hand. Judging from the amount of sake, she must be pretty drunk. She walked, if only barely, stumbling and tripping, until she stopped. She stopped in front of the blonde and wrapped her slim arms around his waist and tried to bury her face into his chest, but Naruto did not allow that. He shoved her from him. What are you doing? He practically screamed, but he bit his lip to keep his voice down. In truth, she wanted to look for the blonde ever since Sasuke left her. She wanted to meet the blonde and talk to him and in turn make him comfort her as he always does. Sure, she felt a little selfish, but she just wants to be heard. I want Naruto. That was she really wanted, and she knew what she wanted, on the inside but not on the outside. Sakura started to cry in her drunken stupor. And Naruto, I am so sorry. Ah. A little self-conscious and still angry, he was taken aback by her crying, especially when she started to hit his chest with her fist, but they didn't hurt. Despite everything that went wrong, he couldn't help himself but want to cry, too. But why? I don't get it. Why do I still feel for this selfish overzealous bitch? Why, damn it? It was a simple question, yet Naruto couldn't even fathom the answer until it hit him. He still loved her. He started to sniff and wipe his face. Ah, damn it, Sakura, Naruto yelled, obvious to the few villagers around. It was pretty funny or heartbreaking to the villagers though. It's one spectacle over another over the blonde, and as a result, his life is starting to turn into a real-life drama that some would love to see or hate to see depending on the circumstance. However, this was real life, so some could actually sympathize, some just hated to see the blonde hurt, while the others just loved the tension and drama, yelling, crying that involves the blonde. Naruto, Sakura yelled, tears and mucus falling or close to falling from her face. She was about to hug the blonde when she stopped and started to cough. She hacked until she threw up all of last night's drinks right at the blonde's feet. He blinked when he realized what just happened. A second ago he was close to crying with the bitch, but now he feels disgusted and crying. He stopped himself. That was short-lived though when he thought of something to get back at her. Sure, he still loved her, but his anger was even greater. He was going to humiliate her, but before he could, he was stopped by somebody unexpected. He turned to meet the hand that grasped his shoulder and was surprised to see Anko there. Anko, what are you doing? She raised an eyebrow and shook her head. I know what you just wanted to do, Naruto, and that's not good. Here, come with me. I have a good way to ease up. Naruto was a little speechless by now. How? She was asleep a moment ago. I wasn't sleeping. How did you know what you were thinking? Naruto's eyes widened. Anko smirked and let go of his shoulder. It was written LL over your face. Naruto blinked. How could that possibly be? He was good at concealing his emotions at a mission. He sighed and nodded his head. Alright, whatever, let's go. Naruto looked around until he finally landed his eyes on Sakura, who was fast asleep on the floor. She was on a fetal position with puke covering her shoes downward. She looked absolutely pathetic. However, he felt more pity for her because he realized that she was probably betrayed as well. He turned his eyes to Anko and slumped his shoulders. Today, so far, was absolutely an awful day to start. Let's get out of here. As both shinobis came to a stop in the 5th training ground in the village, Anko turned to Naruto and immediately flashed through hand signs. Illusionary technique. Akametsu. As soon as she said that, Naruto's reality was slowly twisted and turned to something he really didn't want to see again. Trees turned in sakuras in a semi-seductive pose, bushes turned into Hinata with a shy yet sly pose, and the ground turned into red eyes, and slowly, words started to come out of their mouths. For Sakura it was. You knew I never loved you, yet you deceived yourself into believing my selfishness. It was your fault you were betrayed, it was you who betrayed yourself. For Hinata it was. You hurt me, you made fun of me, and you used me. It was only natural that you got what came to you. You never stood a chance, what did you expect? And for the red eyes, two mouths formed and 2 other sets of eyes appeared. The normal red eyes just blinked and looked at the blonde and merely said, you could only expect that kind of outcome, Naruto. It would have never worked out between us, yet, you tried to defy that. And the last one, with the 3 tomes, merely said, however these words hurt him and pissed him off the most. You bet me, I'll destroy you, I'll destroy you, I'll destroy you, I'll. Destroy. Stop it, stop it, stop it. You. On the outside of the illusion, Anko hoped that the illusion would help clear his heart. After all, the heart is the best way to clean up a fact up conscious. The technique is simple actually. The technique takes the person into his own conscious where he is confronted by his heart. And the heart answers the questions that were slowly building deep inside. She just hopes that his heart actually helps. Only those with a big heart can help themselves. So, since Naruto has one of the biggest one, according to her, he'll be fine. That was shattered, however. When she saw Naruto clutch his head and fall to his knees, a red cloak started to form and a deep roar followed after. She heard his yell of pain and a small pang of guilt followed. What the hell? This wasn't supposed to happen. She snapped out her shock when she realized what was going to happen if she didn't act. She deactivated the technique and ran towards the falling blonde. She grabbed his shoulder before he fully flew and brought his head up to her chest. Naruto. Are you alright? Shit. She put her hand on his head to check his temperature. Fuck, I fucked up big time. She sighed when she realized he fell asleep. Fuck, she looked him over with shock and a little guilt. What happened to your heart, Naruto? It was so big. Fair yada not withstand your own heart's answer must mean that you lost your heart. She looked at the sky and then slammed her free hand to the grass. Fuck. Sakura. Hinata. Even Kurenai really fucked up his heart big time. Her eyes clouded slightly at that. Her own buried memories slowly surfacing in her brain. She started to remember her own love for her teacher Orochimaru before he betrayed the village, and then she remembered the betrayal he inflicted on her when he placed the curse seal on her. Her eyes watered at that. Why must we suffer like this? Why? A few tears slowly flew from her eyes and hit Naruto right in his face. She saw him stir and realized that she's still crying and quickly composed herself by getting rid of her tears. Naru. She was cut off however when Naruto pushed her off him. Get the fuck away from me, he said, his voice cold and yet fueled with anger. Anko's eyes widened to proportions. Nah, Naru. Shut the fuck up. I don't want to fucking hear you. Naruto really didn't scream nor yell that. He said it in a pure normal voice, but the way he said it, cold, emotionless, seemed like he yelled it right in her face when in reality he said it with his head facing towards the ground. Naruto stood up and walked away, not even bothering to hear Anko out at all. Why should he? She hurt him. That was her intention, like all the others, to him at least. Anko stood frozen. She realized something there. Her technique did not help him. The opposite occurred. She broke him. Pity and guilt really swelled up deep inside, threatening to burst, of Anko. Naruto, wait, it's a Misuder. But it was, too, late. He was too far out of reach to even listen. But she wasn't going to give up. She ran up to him, but when she got close to 5 meters he teleported away, leaving nothing but an open field of sadness and guilt. Yep. Today was a horrible day, just like yesterday. Yesterday was a lover's betrayal, and today was a friend's betrayal, but that helped Naruto realize something. All the ones who sleep with him betray him. He couldn't even fathom that. Yet with all the betrayals, only 4 now, going around him, Naruto eventually started to think about the village in general. Why the fuck is he even here in the first place? Was his first thought and his main question, but that thought was put to rest when the only answer he had, has kept coming up, to be Hokage. And to be Hokage is to overcome any and every obstacle no matter how hard. The third warned him when he was a child that betrayals were bound and going to happen, but when it happens, you have to be strong. Speaking of betrayals, his thoughts suddenly drifted to his friends, the rookie 9 or 12 in general. He started to think that maybe they are going to betray him as well. Almost half of them have already. But if they do, this time, hell be prepared for them. Time felt like it was passing by. It was going so fast that Naruto didn't know what to think anymore. Everything was going great, but now, everything is terrible. Even imagining has its limit. The few times even gets to imagine now are the times when he felt at ease, but with all the shit that kept popping up, Naruto can't imagine anything but that now. He sighed. It was a few days after Anko's betrayal, but what could he have expected? He should have known better. He thought that she might actually help him because she knew what betrayal was. Yet to inflict it on him after what her master done to her. It was the same as. He was snapped out of his thoughts when he finally reached his destination. Water Country. Like every mission his cold look, but now, it seemed more realistic than the past missions he's been on. His mission is simple. Kill the Mizukage. Reason. Kidnapping and the destruction of Konoha's resources and the death of one squad of Anbu, who have been reported as passing by. Such things like that would be an act of war. However, with the council and the Hokage's order, he was to kill the cage before anything went out of hand. At first, he wasn't even going to do this mission, but that was fact up since Naruto just wanted to get away from the village. It wasn't a surprise anyways, it was to be expected. He lost his smile after the third betrayal. Kurenai, sure she had good intentions in the beginning, but her intentions were a little messed up as their relationship further progressed into more than the student-teacher or friend stage. It's the thought that counts, right? Yet, out of all his relationships, he realized something from the illusion. It was mostly, completely, his fault that he got so hurt. It was not theirs, it is partially their fault, but his. He believed Sakura's confession because he so longed for it. He hurt Hinata for so long that he didn't even notice her feelings until she finally confessed, but he prolonged the reply for too long, which left her hurt and even more hurt, and probably betrayed, when she thought that he used her as a rebound from Sakura's betrayal. He is too young for Kurenai for it to work out yet. He doesn't realize that age doesn't matter, and the last one, which wasn't even a relationship, another betrayal, but it was to him. He sighed. Sometimes it's tough playing the tragic hero. He sounded hurt. As usual, however, there was a hint or reassuring in his voice. He wiped his face with his hand. As the hand itself could wipe away his troubles, he brightened as a result, but that still didn't help lose his cold look. He should stop thinking about relationships already, it's for his own good. Naruto sighed yet again and slowly moved from the bar's counter and pushed himself off with his two hands. He reached into his pocket and pulled out some money and placed it on top of the counter. He said farewell to the bartender and left the place in place to find a mission that could take away his time and take his mind off things. A smile slowly reached his face with each step he took. Nothing but the villager's smile could do that now in days. As he saw Yukina, he was kinda glad to see a friend. A true friend. His old friends are now assholes and self-righteous bastards who like to preach their side of a story to gain support in their cause. Whatever their cause is in the first place, Naruto doesn't know, nor does he want to, because other than being assholes they are also betrayers. Well, only some of them, that is. Yet he gets the feeling that their cause involves him, and not in a good way. He just hopes that it isn't anything about his problem, and a nasty problem it is. Naruto was brought out of his musing and thoughts when he was being shaken by a pissed off Yukina, or so he thinks. Naruto. Yukina dragged out angrily. However, in the inside she was more than glad to see him. It's been a while actually since she last saw him. The last time she saw him was when that happened, and judging by the blonde's face, he seems over it, but not quite far though. Yukina. Naruto chirped happily. He scratched the back of his head, not very much used to the new Yukina instead of the cold, emotionless Yukina that he remembered from his mission. How are you doing? Yukina smiled faintly, and a small smirk was slowly coming around. Good, but you look better. How have you been? Naruto chuckled a little sadly, but he tried to mask it. However, it was faintly caught, along with his cold look that he is desperately, or so it seems, trying to hide. Been great actually. You? Oh, nothing. However, in the inside she was kicking herself for saying such shit like that. Of course he's not alright, idiot. Really? Well, how are things going for you here in Leaf? She smiled. Well, Hokage-sama decided to make me into a ninja after a series of interrogation and a few tests, though I am in a trial run and Anbu are currently keeping an eye on me for anything suspicious. What? She made you go through all that? Well, yeah, but it's alright. She was interrupted when Naruto shook his head negatively. Hell no, that's not alright. Sigh, maybe I should have gone with you to meet her instead of having you do all of this by yourself. Come on, let's go meet her. Oh no, I couldn't possibly. She was a little surprised at how she stuttered out a response. No, I was going there anyways, and by doing this kills a stone with two birds. Wait. Yukina raised an eyebrow 2 seconds later. Kill a stone with two birds. She couldn't fathom that. She giggled. Naruto, I think it's two birds with one stone. Naruto raised an eyebrow, which didn't seem right with his facial expression, and mouthed an O. He looked around and then he titled his head in the direction of the Hokage Tower. Anyways, let's go. I have something I need to do, and I rather not have you go through all of this when so much has already happened to you. She complied and followed after him when she realized that he wouldn't reason, so she might as well get this over with. As they both walked towards the Hokage Tower, both Yukina and Naruto got reacquainted, and learned many things about each other that they didn't know before. All in all, they were enjoying the quiet walk towards the Hokage's tower. When they finally reached their destination, Naruto entered first, followed by Yukina. A few minutes of walking towards the Hokage's room, they walked in silence since silence is a virtue inside the tower. In the last of the 5 minutes of useless walking, both arrived in front of the Hokage's secretary. She nodded at them, which indicated that they can go in, and they went inside. An irked Hokage greeted them. Naruto and Yukina. Tsunade sighed when she realized what both of them are doing here. Let me guess, you want her to be taken off of her probation, because it isn't fair. Naruto looked at her straight in her eyes. Well, that and the fact that I need a mission out of here. Tsunade knew why he wanted that also. She heard bits and pieces from the villagers, her ninjas, and the betrayers themselves. She wasn't angry at them though. That was their business, not hers. Anything other than that was just a lot of sighing and drinking to get rid of the headaches that might come, like today. Naruto, listen, you can't get out of the village just because you had your heart broken 3 times. Naruto's eyes turned cold instantly. My trust as well, Tsunade, you forgot that. Yukina could see the tension building up by now. She felt out of place in the room. Tsunade placed her hands under her chin. Your trust as well. She turned her chair to look out the window and then finally turned back to face him. You know what, Naruto? Here, she handed him a scroll. And there is a mission that will probably take a while to complete, and not to mention that it is also dangerous. Read it. She turned her attention to Yukina, and raised an eyebrow. What are you doing following this idiot? There is only 2 months left until your probation lifts. Yukina, well, she felt out of place but she never felt intimidated. She straightened up though when her authority figure questioned her. Well, I don't know why, but I thought that he would clear it up. Tsunade smirked. Well, I could, but I can't. However, if you agree to go on a mission with this idiot next to you and see some results, then I could sway some part of me to pardon you. Yukina raised an eyebrow. Pardon? But I haven't done anything wrong. Naruto, already finished with the scroll, turned his attention to Tsunade. Okay, I accept. Thanks for watching.